What is up, everyone? The season resets in just a few hours, so today I'm going to cover the best deck to climb if you want to climb really quickly on your way to Legend. I'm going to cover that deck. I'm going to cover the best decks to face the meta on your climb to Legend, and I'm going to also cover two side decks that I think are interesting and pretty fun, and I'm certain you can also hit Legend with them. There is a lot to cover, but before we get into it, I need to show you what the meta kind of looks like. So we're going to go here to HS Replay, and you can see right here, currently, the meta is kind of controlled by a bunch of aggressive ideas here. You know, we got the Elemental Matrix, Spell Token Hunter, Pain Warlock, Pirate DH, Swarm Shaman, which is like Token Shaman, Zarimi Priest, and then Pirate Shaman, right? These two decks are really close. So the majority of the meta, and you can expect this when the ladder resets, will be very, very aggressive ideas. So if we take a look at the matchup chart, we see here popularity, Libram Paladin is the most popular deck in the game. Dungar Druids, also very popular. So you'll face these a bit on your climb, maybe, but you can. The strongest decks, if we go to effective win rate, are actually these. So you see Pirate Shaman, like clearly almost all green. Zarimi Priest, like all these decks lose to Pirate Shaman. All of the best decks in the game lose to Pirate Shaman. Well, most of them. And but they do relatively well against a good portion of the field, right? So like Dungar Druid and where's the Libram Paladin? I mean, Libram Paladin is not even on the top of this list, but Zarimi Priest does very well against into those popular decks, and that's why it has a really high effective win rate, and this is why it's a deck you should play, right? As long as you don't queue into Pirate Shaman. So in my opinion, the best way to combat the meta is make sure that you play a deck that can beat Pirate Shaman, Zarimi Priest, Pirate Demon Hunter, okay? Because those are the best decks in the game, and they're likely to become popular when the ladder resets, because people want to play decks quick, because they want to get to Legend quick. So for that, I suggest Big Shaman, because you can see here, Big Shaman does really good against Pirate Shaman. It's only horrible matchup for Pirate Shaman. It does really good against Zarimi Priest, and it does good into the Token Shaman, or whatever you want to call it, right? Now, its worst matchups are Dungar Druid, which is fairly popular, and Grunter Hunter. Well, I have no clue what that is, but you know, I'm not even gonna bother. But anyway, that's the meta. We're gonna go straight into some of these decks right now. So let's just open up my collection here. Talk really quickly, briefly about Pirate Shaman. Nothing has changed in two sets here, okay? You play aggressively early, and then you try to find your extra damage to kind of close out the game, right? So, a couple cool synergies you need to know about, right? Obviously, you mulliganing for Murloc, Patches, Pop-Up Book, Cactus Cutter, Sigil Skydiving. That's your mulligan. Greedy Partner if you have a 2-drop, and Carefree Cookie if you have Sigil. All right. Big synergies in here are obviously the Pirate package with Hosen, Roughhouser, and Dangerous Cliffside, as well as Thrall's Gift, as you can see in this footage here. Bloodlust is just broken, and the thing about this deck is that it doesn't have to. You can make your board like unreactable. Like your opponent cannot deal with stuff like Sigil Skydiving, right? It can only prepare itself with taunts or something, right? But if you play something like double Sigil and then you play Bloodlust, that's a hefty amount of damage coming out of nowhere. Okay, especially the card like Dangerous Cliffside also add to that. So this deck is just quite broken. You know, Horn of the Windlord for that extra damage. This really is a strong deck, easy to climb. If you're looking for the best deck to climb, this is it. This is very, very strong. Almost no bad matchups except for the one tough deck, Big Shaman. And this is like, I prefer this. I really don't really like hyper aggressive decks too much. I don't really enjoy that playstyle, although, you know, they are very good and efficient. I prefer something with like a bigger stat line and kind of slower. And this is it, right? So you have similar early game cards. You got Sigil, you got a Pop-Up Book, but then you have more control elements. Molten Magma, Skirting Death, Turn the Tides. And these cards like do really well with like cards like Horn of the Windlord. But this deck, Big Shaman, its goal is to get into a Hagatha or discounting your battle cries. So like, Fairy Tale Forest, Hagatha will draw you Frosty Decor or Cliff Dive, and then you play your Hagatha Slime with the discount so that you get a cheaper Frosty Decor or Cliff Dive with an extra minion. It's pretty godlike. This is pretty crazy deck, and it just destroys those really aggressive decks because you have a survivable early game, and then you have crazy cards like Walking Mountain, right? Like, which is they just are super anti aggro option. So really cool deck. I would suggest playing this. This is the meta breaker pick for me. And then two other decks I want to talk about. First one is Libram decks. This is like probably the most popular archetype in the game, but I think people are really definitely building this deck wrong. Okay, so Librams are pretty simple in plan. The idea is you want to discount your Librams with Interstellar Star Slicer so that you can get cheaper versions of these Librams and play them and win the game because they can be pretty strong if they're cheap. The problem is that we do not have enough ways to discount the cost of Librams. So you could use this, you could use like Holy Cowboy to discount holy spells and whatnot, but it's just not enough. And a lot of the contentious points around Libram decks is this card right here, Interstellar Wayfarer. The 4-mana 4/2 Divine Shield Battlecry will reduce the cost of Librams in your game by 1. So look, there's really only one Libram that needs to go to 0, and that's Libram of Divinity. Because Libram of Divinity gives you inevitability, right? If you are able to get this to 0, this means that every turn you got a free +3/+3 buff, right? And with other cards like Linessa, you can even add more, right? So this is, of all the cards, this is the one Libram that probably needs to get down to 0 when using it. Now, the problem is, if you only run Interstellar Star Slicer, this means you have to draw both in order to get it 0. Or you have to draw one of these plus 2 Wayfarers. Now, because of that, I do feel like Wayfarers must be played, even if they're not a good card. Because getting Libram of Divinity to 0, it's not always necessary, but in a lot of matchups, it's going to be the only way to win. The other Librams, you don't have to get to 0. Libram of Faith doesn't need to be 0. It can be played at 4, it can be played at 6, whatever, right? It doesn't need that big discount. You don't need to give them rush, right, to be effective. But this is the list that I'm running. This is really similar to a list that hit top 15 Legend. However, I made a couple small changes. For me, like Interstellar Wayfarer had to be played. In the ETC, we got Lifesteal, we got Board Clear, and we got Season 6 Man. So I think pretty cool deck. This is the version I'm going with. Two cards that I think you could have potentially ran if you wanted to, depending on your meta, would be 3 cards. Lady Liadrin, Omnitest, which I think probably needs to go back into my version of the deck. And where is she? Where's that girl? Lumia. There you go, Lumia. These would be cards that I would potentially think of running. And lastly, Crewmate decks. So these decks are, people finally are experimenting with them. And like I said weeks ago, the decks aren't that bad. Like, obviously, the thing about Crewmate is they're very fair. Like, their game plan is very linear and they're very fair. So they get blown out by a lot of scam ideas. However, if you get a good start, or if you play around your options well, you can kind of just like overwhelm your opponent with consistent 4/4s on board. And it's a fun play style. I think it's very, very technical, and I think it's a good archetype. I really like where the developers are going with it. It's just slightly underpowered, right? But here is a version that I have been experimenting with. This one implements the Priest Pain cards. So you get Brain Masseuse, you got Acupuncture, obviously, you get Arana because you need access to that, and you got Hot Coals. So, and of course you got Ethereal Oracle, which you will find out in my future video is probably one of the best cards in this set, easily. This is a new version of the deck that I've been running. It's been working pretty well. This is pretty similar to what you would find on Vicious Syndicate, except Vicious Syndicate chose not to run Emergency Meeting. They instead chose to run the 3-drop Draenei, which I think is just a trap. Where is that Draenei? People like to run Troubled Mechanic. I think this is weak. 2 mana, 2/1 body, that's weak to begin with. Divine Shield, Spellburst Draw, Draenei, that's whack. Alright, that is whack. You definitely would rather run Emergency Meeting than that. I don't care about the board presence there. This card is too good not to run in this particular deck. You want to get all the crewmate synergies you have. Definitely run it. I think this deck is pretty cool, pretty interesting. Kane, obviously, he's a must-play. Metamorphosis, maybe not, although it did win the games. But Kane is like, this is your way to get around a lot of threats. In slower matchups where you're expecting bigger threats on board, I would not play Felon Flames early. I would save this for any of my poison crewmates. Anyway, those are the 4 decks that I think you should give a try. Or you can find the deck codes in the description below. As always, have fun climbing, and let me know what decks you are playing in the comments below. I'll see you next time.